Trump transition. Donald's son, Eric, says appointments in a Trump administration will come soon. Who's at the top of the list? In democracy's birthplace, President Barack Obama issues a parting plea to world leaders as he visits Greece. Persecuted Christians, the danger facing people in Iraq, and why they're scared to return home. And protecting children. Pope Francis makes an appeal to the world. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 16th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. A spokesman for President-elect Donald Trump says the transition team is not going to rush. Jason Miller says they're taking a methodical approach to filling Trump's cabinet and White House staff. Donald Trump has only been president-elect for a week, but his transition is causing some turbulence. He broke protocol by ditching reporters for dinner last night. There are also reports of hirings and firings within his team.
They wanted to go in a different direction. It was easy for me to hand it off to Mike Pence in his capable hands coming in. I think there is some confusion going on about a chain of command coming out of New York. Hopefully they'll get that settled.
Multiple leaks indicate much of that confusion is linked to Trump's son-in-law and trusted advisor, Jared Kushner. But Trump tweeted Tuesday that the process is very organized, and his team has pushed back on the criticism.
We feel really good about the transition. I actually would just say it's false to say it's not going well.
Signs of the transition making its way to Washington are finally here. Team leader and Vice President-elect Mike Pence dropped by the D.C. transition headquarters today, as did Newt Gingrich.
The beginning of any transition like this has turmoil because it's just the nature of the process.
And Trump is disputing a New York Times story about transition team troubles. On Twitter, he wrote, "The failing New York Times story is so totally wrong on transition. It is going so smoothly. Also, I have spoken to many foreign leaders." The Times story says world leaders are having a hard time contacting the president-elect. Trump added in another tweet that he's always available to them. And former presidential press secretary Ari Fleischer dug into his archives. He tweeted a photo illustrating the timings of past presidential appointments and how long into the transition period before it was made. Former President George H.W. Bush was the only one on the list to make appointments before week 5. So by comparison, Trump's progress is not as slow as some people may be indicating. Vice President-elect Mike Pence and his wife got a peek at their future today as guests of Vice President Joe Biden and his wife Jill. They all met for lunch at the Naval Observatory, the home that serves as the Vice President's residence.
I hope they enjoy this home as much as Jill and I have.
Do you think the administration will be ready on day one?
No administration is ready on day one. We weren't ready on day one. I've never met one that's ever been ready on day one. But I'm confident on day one, everything will be in good hands and they'll be handled anything that can come before them.
Biden also said that he plans on being available to Vice President-elect Pence whenever he needs him as senior staff, although he concedes that he expects Pence to reject most of his advice. President Obama makes remarks today in Greece, comparing himself with his successor and garnering some laughs in the process. Wrapping up the first of 3 stops on his last trip abroad, the president touched on how democracy transcends personalities.
You may have noticed the next American president and I could not be more different. We have very different points of view, but American democracy is bigger than any one person.
Obama's comments come after he toured the Acropolis, known traditionally as the cradle of democracy. He departed Greece shortly after these remarks and is in Germany tonight, where he dined in private with Chancellor Angela Merkel at his hotel. The two will meet tomorrow for further talks. Senate Democrats have a new leadership lineup to take on the all-Republican government. The leadership team includes a Democrat who supports the Hyde Amendment, which bans taxpayer funds for abortion. Jason Calvi reports now from Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, Democratic leader Harry Reid is retiring at the end of this session. And as expected, Senate Democrats have picked New York's Chuck Schumer as the next Senate minority leader. And he's bringing together the usual suspects in Democratic leadership. But as you mentioned, he's also bringing in one who's bucking the party's platform on one of its abortion planks.
It was a tough night, no doubt about it. When you lose an election like this, you can't flinch. You can't ignore it.
Still recovering from the sting of defeat, New York's Chuck Schumer will be the Senate's minority leader.
We're ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with Republicans, working with soon-to-be President Trump on issues where we agree. But we will go toe-to-toe against the president-elect whenever our values or the progress we've made is under assault.
Schumer tapped Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin to help lead his fellow Democrats. In the past, Manchin has slammed his party for trying to get rid of the Hyde Amendment, which bans taxpayer funds for abortion. Are you going to push back on your party?
Sure, I push back on that. I think I bring a conservative view to the Democratic caucus, and that's my job. My job is going to be reaching out, finding commonality, moving things forward, but from a conservative approach. And I think it's very encouraging by Chuck to reach out and say, Joe, would you want to be on the team? I said, if I can have a voice and bring the conservative, moderate view of Democrats all across West Virginia and across this country, I'm happy to do it.
So you think the Hyde Amendment's going to stay put?
I think it will, sure.
As for Republicans, they've reelected Kentucky's Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader. He's downplaying the nasty rhetoric during the campaign.
Almost anything I heard in the course of this campaign pales in comparison to what Adams and Jefferson said about each other.
McConnell enraged Democrats by refusing to let the Senate consider President Obama's pick for the Supreme Court. Now, that's paying off. On the House side, Nancy Pelosi has announced today that she is rerunning for the position of minority leader in the House. Democrats were supposed to have their elections tomorrow. They postponed it till November 30th in the wake of their stunning losses last week. Lauren?
Well, it's interesting, Jason, to see why that is. I also understand former vice presidential nominee Tim Kaine is back at work.
That's right. Actually ran into him a few times, spoke with him, and he says he's going back to work, focusing on foreign affairs and the military. I asked him if there's a lot of soul searching in the Democratic Party right now. He says he's not really wanting to do a post-mortem, but he says Democrats as a whole are doing a lot of soul searching right now.
And as you said, they're delaying that vote. All right, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill, thank you very much. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Prosecutors announced charges against a Minnesota police officer who shot and killed an African-American man. Geronimo Yanez is charged with second-degree manslaughter for fatally shooting Philando Castile. The shooting took place during a traffic stop outside St. Paul, Minnesota in July. Castile's girlfriend streamed the aftermath on Facebook. Family members say Castile was racially profiled because he was black. Air strikes in Syria kill at least 27 people, including 4 children. Bombs hit hospitals, schools, and other buildings in eastern Aleppo. Children walked through the damage after fleeing from school after the bombings. Russia denies being involved in today's airstrikes, saying its operations are against terrorists farther south from Aleppo. A suicide bomber kills at least 4 people near the defense ministry in Kabul, Afghanistan. The bomber on a motorcycle appeared to target a vehicle carrying security officials. No one has claimed responsibility for that attack. And the Iraqi-led coalition continues to strike ISIS targets near Mosul. Troops have hit the terror group with 4,000 bombs over the past month. The goal is to recapture Iraq's second-largest city from ISIS. A U.S.-led Iraqi forces battle to oust ISIS from Mosul. Some Christian refugees in neighboring towns are returning home to an uncertain future. Philippe Nassif, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians, joins us in studio. Welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Many Christians from ISIS-liberated towns are really afraid of coming back. What needs to happen to make that comeback easier?
Sure, absolutely. Well, they're terrified. They've been persecuted. It's been declared a genocide by the United States government and international agencies. They've been driven from their homes. They've been killed en masse. ISIS has declared that they are infidel, that they do not belong on this earth, and that they need to be wiped out. So tens of thousands of them have fled the Nineveh province, which is traditionally one of the main areas of Christians in Iraq and the cradle of Christianity in the world. What needs to happen is we need to have an autonomous area for these people to be able to live freely and safely and worship.
So is that like creating an Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not creating an Israel, but what it is creating an area for them to live freely, perhaps a self-governing province. It's not an entire nation within a state, but it's in conjunction with the Iraqi government, sort of a federalized type form of government.
Okay, the campaign, let's move on to Mosul, has just started. And what is the situation there for people who have fled that city?
Sure, so it's rapidly fluid. It's changing by the day.
Right, by minute by minute.
Minute by minute, but right now there are a lot of liberated areas that are traditional Christian villages just north of Mosul and the surrounding areas that have been liberated by, with the United States assistance and the Iraqi military from ISIS militants. So people are starting to return to their homes. You've seen some of the images. They're starting to pick up the pieces of their lives, go see the churches, see the desecration, the bombings, the devastation. They don't entirely feel safe yet, but they're slowly making their way back. Mosul is still rapidly evolving itself in the city.
You know, what I can't understand is having to leave your home and then coming back and everything is completely decimated. You know, between 2003 and 14, at least 1,100 Christians have been murdered, so a lot of your family isn't even there. Do Christians have a future in the Middle East?
They do have a future.
Okay.
They have a future in the Middle East, and it should be a national security priority of the United States. In fact, it is. The first step is declaring it a genocide, so we've now recognized
right?
That's happened. We're one of the organizations that pushed to have it declared
Absolutely.
a genocide. That was the first step. The second step is recognizing that these people have a long history in the Middle East. In fact, they're some of the original inhabitants. They need areas that they can live freely and safely. And that's really our priority as an organization with other organizations, is to make sure that happens.
Thank you so much, Philippe Nassif, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians.
Thank you.
Coming up, bearing wrongs patiently, Pope Francis shares a message about spiritual works of mercy. And as the Jubilee year wraps up, a touching new documentary from the Knights of Columbus.
Have mercy on us.
People share their own stories of mercy. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis calls on the world to protect our children.
Perché non cadano mai in forme di schiavitù.
The Holy Father urged people around the world to do more to prevent children from falling victim to slavery and mistreatment. Alan Holdren is the Rome Bureau Chief for Catholic News Agency. He joins us now. Alan, what is the Holy Father asking the world to do for the littlest among us, our children?
Pope Francis made an appeal today to people's consciences, families, individuals, institutions, saying that we need to go out and protect children to ensure their welfare in the world. This is ahead of this weekend's World Day for Children. He said that we also need to make sure that they don't fall into situations of human trafficking, slavery, situations of war. He said that we also need to provide for their basic right to education. This is, of course, on the UN's Day for children in the world.
Okay, and it was also the last papal audience for the Jubilee Year of Mercy today. What did the Pope say? What was his focus?
The Pope was speaking in particular about spiritual works of mercy. For the last several weeks, he's been speaking about corporal works of mercy. Today, he turned towards bearing wrongs patiently. He said that first we need to look at ourselves and see if we are wronging others, and to correct that within ourselves, to make an examination of conscience before we point out other people's wrongs. He also spoke about admonishing sinners and teaching the ignorant, saying that sometimes you just need to point something out to someone so that they can take it to heart and possibly make changes in their own lives.
Sometimes it's just really hard to say, I'm sorry, so I get what the Pope is saying. You know, this is also the last bit of the Year of Mercy. What can our viewers, what can I do to gain special graces?
Well, we've had this possibility of a special indulgence, as it's called, this special grace that's given to people who go through holy doors, who go to confession, go to Mass, pray for the Pope. Right now, there's only one holy door left that's open in the world, and that's right here behind me in St. Peter's. That's not the only possibility for graces. Going to confession is right there at your local parish. That's always a good idea. Participating in the sacraments. Pope Francis said today that we need to maintain, even if the holy doors are closing in the world, we need to maintain the doors of mercy in our hearts open. That's what he's been trying to say for this entire holy year during these Jubilee audiences, saying that we really need to focus on showing God's mercy and living God's mercy as Jesus would.
You know, I remember going through in Huntsville, Alabama, going through the shrine door there where Mother Angelica had her church, and it was just a beautiful experience. Alan Holdren, Catholic News Agency, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
A new documentary highlights the impact of God's mercy on people's lives. The film, called The Face of Mercy, focuses on personal stories from those who have been transformed by God's grace. Wyatt Goolsby is here with more on the film's message. Wyatt.
Lauren, the film is inviting all of us to embrace mercy, forgiveness, and reconciliation, a message that can apply to anyone, but it's especially important to Catholics as we wrap up the Jubilee Year of Mercy.
As Christians, we're called to proclaim the gospel, but first we have to know who the disciples are. I need to give you Jesus, but first I have to recognize that you are him.
The new documentary, The Face of Mercy, offers a challenge to think of mercy not just as an idea, but as a person, Jesus Christ.
For John Paul, divine mercy was the heart of the gospel.
The film highlights two saints, John Paul II, who is known as the Pope of Divine Mercy, and Sister Faustina Kowalska. Throughout her life, Faustina, a Polish nun who lived in the early 20th century, reported having visions of Jesus and conversations with him. Sister Gaudia Skas is a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, the same religious order as St. Faustina.
Such an acceptance in her readings, in her writings, such hope and such a beautiful perspective, full of light, you know, in every situation. So she inspires me continuously.
Her writings would go on to inspire millions. Many pilgrims come to Poland to venerate her relics. Patrick Kelly, the executive director of the St. John Paul II Shrine, says Poland's other famous saint was inspired by Faustina.
His message was that we need to show mercy. We need to receive mercy first, as a fundamental vocation of a Christian is to receive mercy, and we do that from Jesus Christ, but also to give mercy, to be generous to others, and to forgive.
Kelly says it's through forgiveness that people can heal. The Face of Mercy features many who have found that healing in their lives.
The documentary is airing throughout the next month on various ABC affiliates throughout the country. You can also purchase the film online. It was funded by the Knights of Columbus, who also supports our program. Lauren?
How does this documentary tie in Pope Francis? We saw a lot of JP2, which was just heartwarming.
Yeah, Pope Francis is referenced throughout this film as sort of carrying on the legacy of John Paul II. Francis quotes him all the time, saying, for example, the church must go out and heal the wounds of using mercy. So it's a continuation of what really John Paul II used to say.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wyatt Goolsby. Up next, a Washington florist defends religious freedom in court. And Pope Francis delivers a message to his brother bishops in America. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. On Tuesday, the Washington State Supreme Court heard arguments in the case of a florist who was sued after she declined to provide flowers for a same-sex wedding. Attorneys for Baronelle Stutzman told the court providing flowers for the wedding was incompatible with her Christian faith. Kelly Fedoruk, legal counsel at the Alliance for Defending Freedom, joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Did she discriminate, or is the government violating her sincere held beliefs? Which is it?
What's at stake in this case is whether Baronelle, and really all Americans, whether they have the freedom to live, to work, and to speak consistent with their beliefs without fear of unjust government punishment.
And so somebody would say, one of the justices in this case asked how your case differs from a hotel owner saying that his religion opposes, I don't know, racial integration, and so he can't have a black man come into his hotel to stay.
This case is fundamentally different. Barronelle served and waited on Rob, who was a friend of hers, for over 10 years, created all sorts of floral arrangements for him for a number of different events. What she couldn't participate in was one specific event. It was a wedding ceremony that violated her sincerely held beliefs about what marriage is. But as Barronelle will tell you, if Rob walked into her shop today, she would hug him and catch up on his life and wait on him for another 10 years. And you know, what's important to note is that the Constitution protects not only the freedom to believe, but the freedom to act on those beliefs. And what the Washington State Attorney General is trying to do here is to compel this grandmother to violate her beliefs and participate in an event that violates the very core of who she is.
You know, this isn't the only case we've talked about here at EWTN News Nightly involving a conflict between religious liberty and between, you know, held beliefs on same-sex marriages. Do you believe that your case or a similar case will be heard by the Supreme Court anytime soon?
It's definitely very likely. We currently have a case pending cert right now, and a lot of cases are in the works. We've asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review a case with very similar facts out of Colorado. And why this is so important, what was truly chilling yesterday, listening to the argument of the Washington State Attorney General, is under his logic, that would mean that any American, the government could come in and force you to speak a message or participate in an event. And yesterday he even said that a poet could be forced to write poetry even if it violated his beliefs. That would mean that an atheist singer could be forced to sing at a Catholic mass, or a Democrat speechwriter could be forced to—
But they could say no. You couldn't force somebody to do that, but I
Well,
understand
but what
your
he's
point.
arguing is that the government actually could. He was saying that is speech, but the government could come in and compel you to speak a message or participate in an event that
you
violates—
do not believe.
Right, exactly.
So when do you expect to hear a ruling in this case, and what do you think it's going to be?
Right. Well, usually the Washington State Supreme Court rules between 90 to 120 days after they hear argument. So we're looking probably at February, March at the earliest. And you know, we're very hopeful coming out of the arguments yesterday. I will say that if Barronelle was to win, and if you're looking at the court of public opinion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech would resoundingly win. When we came out of the courtroom yesterday, there were over 500 supporters out there cheering for her, asking for justice in her case. So truly some very important issues, but freedom of all
Seems like
Americans—
she does have some support behind
Absolutely.
her. All right.
Absolutely.
Kelly Fedoruk, legal counsel at the Alliance Defending Freedom. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
And Pope Francis praises the diversity of American Catholics. He delivered a video message yesterday to his brother bishops, meeting at the annual U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Our great challenge is to create a culture of encounter which encourages individuals and groups to share the richness of state traditions and experience, to break down walls, and to build bridges.
The Holy Father urged the U.S. Church to get out of its comfort zone and heal a society facing increasing polarization. Yesterday, the bishops elected Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez, a native of Monterrey, Mexico. He's the conference's first Latino vice president. Pope Francis is trading his mitre for a new cap. Chicago Archbishop Blaise Cupich gave the Holy Father, you guessed it, a Cubs baseball hat and ball yesterday during a meeting at the Vatican. Cupich tweeted this picture with the message, "News of the Cubs win reached all the way to the Vatican." Archbishop Cupich will be made a cardinal by Francis on Saturday. That does it for us tonight. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. We leave you with more images of the Pope greeting pilgrims in St. Peter's Square. This is his last weekly audience during the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Good night, and God bless.